All right, folks, Tito here, Jeff Thitoff with your Black and Gold Blitz. Thanks so much for tuning in. Lots to talk about today. Regarding the first news I want to get into is the fact that Jonnu Smith was cut and Pat Freiermuth now looks like he's back in the same place he was as the primary tight end. There was a lot of hope for Smith coming in when he came over in the trade, and so it looked like maybe because he was good in Miami, and there was talk that maybe that they could kind of recreate that again and give the two tight end the two weapons on the tight end spot, make that part of the offense. But Smith never really panned out. The Steelers will save about $7 million in cap space, which helps out. The new league year begins on March 11th. So once March 11th hits, that's when the Steelers will cut Smith. Freiermuth goes back to being Mr. Reliable. I know Steelers fans probably like him more anyway from being in the stands and hearing how they what they do whenever Freiermuth catches a pass. All right, I want to spend the rest of the time now talking about quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers has not said if he's going to come back or not. There's been reports both ways. There's some people that think, oh, yeah, that say the Steelers believe he's going to come back. He was on Pat McAfee's show, didn't do anything, didn't say definitive. So we don't know if he's going to come back or not. If Rodgers comes back, if Rodgers does not come back, it's bad for Will Howard because I think another year for Will Howard being mentored by Aaron Rodgers under Mike McCarthy would be fantastic for his development. So I wanted to go through a list of some of the quarterbacks that could be out there and tell you why I might like or might not like them. Kyler Murray, look, the quarterback out of Arizona, he'd be cheap because the Cardinals are picking up almost all of his salary. $36.8 million, I believe, is the total they owe. And so he could sign for the league minimum of 1.3. He also has interest in I guess what are they called now? The Sacramento A's, the Las Vegas A's, the formerly Oakland A's. Anyway, they have interest in him. They've invited him to say, hey, look, we're still open to talking to you. He was the 9th pick overall in the first round back in 2018 by the A's. So that's a possibility also if he doesn't want to play football anymore. I don't know if Murray's style would work well in Pittsburgh. I don't see him having, it's especially in like the winter in the AFC North, some of those games. I just don't see Kyler's being, I don't want to say tough enough, but built the way you need to be. That's a polite way of saying he's short in order to have success in Pittsburgh as a quarterback. Tua Tagovailoa is another one could be out there. I want no part of him. No part of Tua whatsoever. Tua, same kind of mold there. Little slender, but his medical reasons are the medical reasons why I don't want him there. And he may be cleared by everybody to play quarterback in the NFL. But I remember what Darren Waller said after the season. And Darren Waller with the Dolphins this year, the former tight end for the Raiders and Giants. Darren Waller said that in practice, Tua Tagovailoa looked great. Looked fantastic in practice. When he got to the games, it was a different story. And he seemed timid, bad passes, bad throws, whatever, So I believe Tua's just afraid to get hit anymore. And so I don't think he's another viable. I don't think he's an option either. So there's a couple reasons I wouldn't want Tua. I would, if they gave me a choice, Kyler or Tua, I'd take Kyler. But quite frankly, I don't want either one of them. Another name being talked about is Malik Willis. Malik Willis, who finished very well for the Green Bay Packers this year. And there's talk that he'll get a contract between $20 and $25 million a year by somebody. He's a true free agent. All I would say, and this is not, they're two different quarterbacks. But I don't know if you remember Matt Flynn or not. Matt Flynn, he attempted just 132 passes over 4 seasons with Green Bay. Had a monster game, a huge game, to end the 2011-12 season when he put up 480 yards and 6 touchdowns, just 1 pick. That was to close out the 11-12 season. Again, he had just thrown 132 passes in 4 years there. On March 18th of the next year, he signed a deal with the Seattle Seahawks with $9 million guaranteed, $20.5 million overall. So he wasn't like he was spectacular throughout. He had that one big game that everyone really drooled over. 480 yards, 6 touchdowns, 1 pick at the end of the 11-12 season and win over Detroit. So he comes in and he's competing with Tarvaris Jackson and Russell Wilson, who was drafted in the third round that year. And Wilson won the starting job. The rest is history there. And then Flynn all of a sudden was expendable. I am not saying that Malik Willis will be the same way. But when I see quarterbacks, and it's the same thing I'll talk about in a minute with college quarterbacks. So, like, if you don't have a lot of experience in the NFL, I don't want to spend a lot of money on you. And so Malik Willis may prove me wrong, but he's not the same reclamation project when you talk about like Sam Darnold and what he and Baker Mayfield. They had much more NFL experience. Not all of it great. I'll give you that. Not all of it great, but they still had a lot more NFL experience throwing passes than Malik Willis does. So I would not want to spend on Malik Willis. Kirk Cousins. Now, Kirk Cousins, he might be the best option if Rodgers retires. Now, Cousins, I know, he had the Achilles injury in Week 8 back in the 2023 season while playing for the Vikings when they were in a game. I think it was against Green Bay, ironically. I talked a lot about Green Bay today. But and then in 2025, 2024, it wasn't really bad for the Falcons. In 2025, I'm sorry, it wasn't really bad for the Falcons. But he's like fully healed now from the injury. And the fact that he's fully healed, and you saw what happened with Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. When he first came back from the Achilles injury, it wasn't pretty for the first 10 games of his Jets tenure after coming back. But now, last 7 games, he looked a lot like the old Rodgers. This year with Pittsburgh, he has moments. I'm not saying that Rodgers was as good as he was the last 7 games with the Jets, but maybe it was the last 10 games. I got to look. Anyway, there was a point when Rodgers looked much better after the injury. Cousins could be the same way. So if Rodgers retires, I would take Cousins, let him mentor Will Howard. Yes, I love Will Howard a lot. I still think he's got a chance to be a starter in the NFL. All right, Anthony Richardson, another option. Someone didn't play enough in college, though. It's a lesson about drafting QBs that are inexperienced. We've seen guys what happens like this before. They don't get many starts in college. Richardson had like 13 starts or 12 starts in college before the Colts made him the 4th overall pick in the draft, and it's just not working out. Joe Flacco, he is another one I would pass on unless every other option didn't come through. Every other realistic option. If, Cousins would say no, then, I would consider this, I guess. Like I said, I don't want any part of Tua or Malik. But another option then is Geno Smith. Geno Smith's going to be released by the Raiders. But I think looking at things in his career, I think he's more suited for a backup role. He had a terrible QBR last year. So I'm not convinced that he would be the right choice either. So I think it's Rodgers number 1. If Rodgers doesn't come, then I would go with Kirk Cousins because I want a veteran bridge quarterback there still with Will Howard. So, all right, folks, that's it for this Pittsburgh Steelers Daily Blitz. Appreciate you tuning in. Follow me on Twitter @ThitHappens. And lots more to talk about as we get into free agency. And, we'll do more draft talk because we're getting closer to that. It's going to be it's an important year for the Steelers. Look, first time in a long time they have a head coach in Mike McCarthy. They had Tomlin for the longest time. Obviously, Cowher, Chuck Noll, you all know that. But it'll be an interesting year regardless of how it plays out. It's something to watch. All right, folks, I'll talk to you soon. Again, this is Jeff Thitoff @ThitHappens on Twitter with your Pittsburgh Steelers Blitz.